i20N is Hyundai's latest hot hatch offering, complementing the i30N by essentially being the little brother in every way. It's smaller, lighter, more basic, and most importantly, cheaper, at between 12 and 20 grand less than its big brother. So there really is no point comparing them, as they are a different price bracket attracting a different buyer. At under 40k drive away, the i20N is the cheapest track-focused car on the market and the cheapest legit hot hatch. It's also cheaper than other track-capable cars such as the MX-5 and the BRZ86 twins. On paper, it may seem simple with beam rear end and McPherson strut front suspension, but the N badge means the suspension has been set up to handle track work. The brakes look simple, but are 320mm in diameter up front and more than enough to handle the 1210 kilo curb weight. The wheels are 18-inch and wrapped in P0 rubber, another clue of its performance potential. Under the hood is a 1.6 litre 4-cylinder turbo making 150 kilowatts, mated to a 6-speed manual transmission with a mechanical LSD. This is a very important performance credential. Expect 0 to 100 in mid to high 6s and the quarter mile in high 14s, depending on surface conditions and the driver. The styling is very hot hatch and modern, and we personally love it, especially in this black on white two-tone combination. Some might say it's a bit edgy, but we're digging the latest Hyundai design language. Inside, it's pretty basic finish and quality, but has bucket seats, another performance clue, and is filled to the brim with the latest mod cons. We could sit here listing them, but we all know that you guys know how to read a brochure. One thing we love is the dash display when going into N mode. It's clearly inspired by a motorsport digital dash, and the N menu screens allow you to change some of the setup of the car and monitor performance. But enough of these sales points. What does it drive like? So what is the i20N like to drive as a daily driver? Well, the answer is fine. It's not amazing, you're not going to write home about it and tell everyone how great it is, but you are dealing with a track-focused car that's under $40,000. So some people have called the interior a little bit cheap, but honestly, I reckon for the money, it's perfectly fine. It's got every mod con you need. The bucket seat's pretty comfortable, but at the same time, isn't painful for daily driving. So I guess it's it's fine inside. It's not at a price point where I'd expect any better than what I've got. Steering wheel does feel really good. It's got heaps of mod cons. The stereo is great. So as far as I'm concerned, it has everything that you need for a car that you want to daily drive. One thing that does act a little bit weird is the stop-start function can freak out sometimes when you come to a stop, and then on a hill you might start rolling in neutral before you get going. But you know, that's only sometimes that happens. What else don't I like? The steering's probably a little bit heavy, I think, even in normal mode. But these are very small gripes that you'd get used to pretty quick and wouldn't be too worried about. But really the only thing with this car that I guess you would notice compared to any other run-of-the-mill hatchback at this price point is it's just a little bit stiff. It does crash and bump over some big bumps pretty badly, but me personally, I think it's fine. So really the question to ask about the i20 is, could you drive it every day and could you live with it? And the answer is yes, as long as you don't mind driving a manual. I've had this car for a week now and I've actually quite enjoyed it. The big things for me though is the stereo is good, the seat is comfortable, and I can live with it, you know. And surprisingly, there was more room in the back seat for the kids and more room in the boot than I actually thought there would be. This car almost, I guess, defies physics with what it looks like versus how much stuff fits inside, which I think is pretty good. One cool little party trick that I love is obviously the dash. When you press N mode, and it brings up that digital dash looking or motorsport looking dash display. I think it looks unreal. You put it into N mode, the exhaust gets louder and the car gets a little bit more aggressive. Me personally, I think that contrast between the quiet daily driven car and the N mode could be even more. I actually think that this car, if this had like an intake and had induction noise and even more pops and crackles, I think it would almost be, I guess, funny, like seeing a little hatchback like this making popping noises, induction noises and blow-off valve noises. I think it's actually really funny. I'd love this thing to sound more like a rally car. which would make a great contrast from normal mode to N mode. That's one thing that I think would be pretty cool if you did own one of these and modify it. So we'll put the car in N mode. You can hear it gets louder in the idle. Obviously the exhaust has opened up. What else do you get? You get sharper throttle response and mapping. If you want to, you can have sharper steering. You get the auto blip on downshift. So basically it just, well, flicks the switch into, I guess, track or performance mode, which is what you want, right? You don't just want it to work better, you want it to sound and feel better as well. So here we go. Now, even though it does sharpen up the throttle response, the car is still quite lazy down low, just due to the fact it's a 1.6 litre. Honestly, you need to rev this thing to make the most of it, and that's the biggest difference between this and its larger brother, the i20N, is it just, I guess it lacks low down throttle response a little bit. It's not terrible, it's just that when you drive below sort of 3,500 RPM, just drives like a normal hatch. The party kind of really starts after 4,000 in this car. You know, you're talking 0 to 100 in high 6s, quarter mile in high 14s, which is actually very comparable to the Subaru BRZ. The N mode doesn't transform it as much as it does an i20N, but it does transform it enough to go from everyday, you know, hatch daily driver into a fun little pocket rocket. But yeah, it definitely does lack the lowdown torque of the larger brother, but that could be seen as good or bad. I guess it's harder to speed when you're just cruising around, but you do need to sort of really get some RPM up to make the most of this car. But it is fun, like it is still pretty fun. Now, to truly understand what this car is all about, all you need to do is find a corner. And that's when you go, all right, I get it now. Like, I get it. That is what the i20N is all about. Find yourself a corner, a twisty road, or a racetrack, and the i20N really does come alive and show you why this thing is so good. In a straight line, it's not that special, but corners is what makes the i20N such a special thing. So, the racetrack is going to tell us all. We took the i20N to a track that suits its lightweight and nimble nature, Luddenham Raceway. We also brought along a pro driver, and not just any pro driver, one that drives for Hyundai. Josh Buchan drives a Hyundai i30N in the Super Cheap Auto TCR series for HMO Customer Racing.
Cool, so my everyday car is a Hyundai i30N. It's a sedan. Great car, massive boot, I love it. I've never put it in N mode, it's purely my everyday car. And my role with the brand is I race in TCR Australia with the local factory Hyundai team, HMO Customer Racing. So since the N brand has come out to Australia in 2017, I've been involved with the brand since that. So I've driven every N model, numerous occasions. i20N, however, though, is obviously quite new, and you can actually look on YouTube for the first ever time I drove it on track, my first impression. So today was very much the same. It was the second time I've driven an i20N on track, and it is very different to the other models, but they are all individually their own very special car. The i20N versus the i30N are very different cars, obviously, not only in look, but shape, size, engine, capacity, everything is different about them. I think the one thing that you can take from them is that they both have that N DNA that the brand has created. So they're very, track happy. They're very good on the road as well. I guess the difference with the i20 is that because it's a segment smaller, I guess, if you like, it's a little bit more nimble perhaps. And they are a little bit more track focused, I would suggest, than a 30. But, all of them do the job. You certainly do drive both cars differently. Obviously, the 20 having 50 kilowatt less than the 30 means that you don't have to be so progressive on the power. And the diff does such a good job of just dragging you out of a corner. So I would never suggest anyone just to smash the throttle coming out of a corner, but it's kind of a little bit like that in the 20, is that you can really use the diff to pull you out of corners. It's very nimble on the front, so you can really turn in late, get the car turned. You can feel the inside rear popping up to help you turn in every corner you go into. It's an absolute blast every time you drive it. So I would suggest that it's probably just a little bit more pointy and a little bit more forgiving in terms of just being a hoon on the gas. So I've driven Luddenham several times. I do a lot of driver coaching and driver training work, so I've been out here quite a lot. It's 10 minutes from my house. In fact, I should digress. I wasn't meant to be driving anything today. I came out to go say hi to my mate. So here we are. But yeah, I've done enough around Luddenham to know the place. And the time in the bog standard 11,000 k old tired Pirelli i20N, pretty competitive. I don't really know where it benchmarks. I don't know what the competitors do against this, but Hawkins, you'll definitely be pushing me along through the day. So
It's one thing to see what a pro driver does, but what is an enthusiast driver capable of in the i20N? I jumped in to find out. Well, after taking the i20N out for 2 sessions at Luddenham today, all I can say is, wow, a car like this has no business being this quick. Why do I say that? It has a beam rear end, McPherson strut front, a little engine, 150 kilowatts. It's on paper, if you looked at the build of this car, you wouldn't think much of it. So whatever the guys at N Division did to sprinkle their magic on the i20, it has worked. I'm not a front-wheel drive guy, so the fact that I was able to get up to speed in this car in 1 session and go within 0.8 of a Hyundai backed factory driver, and then in another session go within half a second of Josh Buchan, that tells me the car is so confidence-inspiring and so user-friendly that I was able to get up to speed that quickly. The big question though is it fun? Yes, but is it funner than some other cars? Well, here's the thing, some people are used to front-wheel drive, so they'd love it. I am a rear-wheel drive guy or a four-wheel drive guy. So the biggest comparison is to the BRZ. Even though this is quicker than the BRZ by a fair margin, stock for stock, and even with tyres on the BRZ, this is still a little bit quicker based on my lap times. I still prefer enjoying the BRZ more for that rear-wheel drive balance. The BRZ's a little bit more rewarding with input versus output. The i20N, you can be a little bit ham-fisted in some areas. You can just literally turn, tromp the throttle, and the LSD will just drive you out of the corner. So there are some areas of the track where I guess the car does it for you, while the BRZ requires a little bit more, I guess, driver finesse to get it absolutely perfect. I mean, both of them are great chassis, great cars. Both are fantastic for beginners. Which one would you want to be a beginner in? Probably the i20N, I'd say. But at the end of the day, you can't argue with the lap times. Dead stock on stock, exactly how you get from the showroom floor. The BRZ did a 56.6, and I was able to do a 54.9 in the i20N. So just that alone, that lap time number is super impressive.